38 years together. And somehow I was the last person to know my marriage was over.
Diane Walker didn't leave the marriage because she stopped loving him. She left because she finally heard what 38 years of silence had been saying. You were never really here. Her husband didn't shout it, didn't need to. He said it the way cold men always do, with paperwork, clean, dated, witnessed. She was 65 years old, and according to every document that now defined her life, she owned nothing. Not even the name she had built quietly, carefully, in the margins of someone else's story. Her children chose comfort over truth. The lawyers were efficient, and Diane walked out carrying the one thing nobody thought to put a value on during the settlement: a single old key. A paper tag looped through it. Her father's handwriting. Walker's service station. Route 16. It's yours now, Diane. Everyone who knew that place called it worthless. A dead gas station on a forgotten Ohio road. Nobody fought her for it. Nobody even mentioned it. But there was something inside that station, something her father had been quietly protecting for over 30 years, that was about to make everyone who dismissed Diane Walker wish they had paid much closer attention. Subscribe and stay with me. Because what her father left inside that station is not what anyone expected, and it changes everything. But before that key opened anything, before Diane Walker discovered what her father had been quietly protecting for 30 years, she had to find the place first. And nothing about that drive prepared her for what she found. Route 16 east of Muskingum County doesn't show up on travel guides. It doesn't show up on much of anything. Just a long, flat Ohio road lined with old fence posts and grain silos, and the occasional building that looks like it stopped trying sometime in the 80s. Diane almost missed the turnoff entirely. A weathered sign nearly swallowed by overgrowth leaning hard into the tree line. Walker's service station, a quarter-mile ahead. Her father's name, still out there after everything. She turned in. The gravel lot was cracked and weeded and tired. 2 old pumps stood near the entrance like they had been frozen mid-sentence years ago, and nobody had bothered to finish the thought. The building was smaller than memory had made it. She unlocked the front door. It opened without resistance, like it had been expecting her. Inside, dust, stillness, cold air that had been sitting undisturbed for a long time. A steel counter, stacked repair manuals, a coffee mug exactly where someone left it, and beside the register, her father's reading glasses, folded, waiting. She hadn't prepared herself for that, for the specific smallness of grief that comes not from the big things, but from a pair of glasses sitting where a man left them because he believed someone would come back for them. She moved deeper into the station. That is when she saw the door. Back corner, older wood, darker than the rest of the walls. A separate lock that had nothing to do with the key she was holding. And on the floor, slid deliberately beneath the door like someone needed to make sure it would not be missed, a single white envelope. Her name on the front, written in a hand she would recognize anywhere. She reached down slowly, turned it over, and felt something sealed inside. Not paper, something smaller, something hard. She already knew what was inside that envelope before she opened it. The shape told her. The weight told her. She tipped it into her palm anyway. A key, brass, old, worn smooth at the teeth like it had opened that door 10,000 times before today. Beneath it, a single folded note, her father's handwriting, unhurried, certain. The room behind that door was always yours. Everything inside it will make sense. You will know what to do. No explanation, no instructions beyond that. Just his quiet certainty in 3 lines that she would figure it out. She crossed the room, fit the brass key into the separate lock, pushed the door open. The room was small, 1 bare bulb overhead. Wooden shelves lining 3 walls from floor to ceiling, and on every shelf, boxes, dozens of them, labeled in her father's careful hand. Letters, 1971 through 89. Repair logs, 1965 through 2001. Route 16 stories. Trucker notes, keep. She lifted the first box down, set it under the light, and what she found inside stopped her completely. Her father, Franklin Walker, had not simply run a gas station. He had run something people came back to on purpose. The letters proved it, dozens of them, typed on company letterhead, scrawled on napkins, written on the back of receipts from diners 3 states away, truckers, traveling families, salesmen driving lonely stretches of highway with nobody waiting at either end, all of them writing to say the same thing, that this station on Route 16 was the one place on the road where someone actually saw them. Diane read letter after letter. each one a small window into a version of her father she had never fully known. Not just a mechanic, not just a gas station owner, something closer to a lifeline. One name kept appearing across the letters: Elias Boone, Zanesville, Ohio. A long-haul trucker who had written to her father more times than anyone else in those boxes. His letters were different, longer, more careful with their words. In one letter, he called the station the safest mile on Route 16. In another, he mentioned something her father had apparently kept hidden from everyone. Something about the station itself. Something Elias called the real reason Franklin Walker never sold. Diane set that letter down. Read that line again. The real reason Franklin Walker never sold. She had always assumed her father held on to the station out of stubbornness, out of sentiment, but Elias Boone wrote about it like it was something else entirely. Like there was a reason, a specific one. She reached back into the box for the next letter, and her hand landed on something that was not paper. She pushed the remaining letters aside, and there at the bottom of the box sat a cassette tape, a strip of masking tape across the front. Her father's handwriting, 3 words: play this first. Before she could play that tape, she needed power. And Walker's service station had not seen a working breaker in 2 years. She found the old panel behind the counter, flipped every switch, got nothing but a hollow click each time. Her father's voice on that cassette, whatever he had been saving to say, was going to wait one more night. She boiled water on a camping stove she found under the back shelf, sat on the old stool, drank coffee that tasted like the 1980s, and listened to Route 16 go quiet. The storm came in hard around 9 o'clock. No gentle warning, no slow build, just wind, then sideways rain, then Route 16 turning into something you could not safely drive on in under 10 minutes. Headlights began pulling off the road. 1, then 2, then a semi-easing into the gravel lot with a long exhale of air brakes that shook the station windows. Diane looked at the door, then at the people sitting in those vehicles with nowhere to go. She unlocked it, propped it open, and Walker's service station received its first visitors in 2 years. They were a mixed collection, the way strangers always are during emergencies. A young couple with a baby who had been crying since before the storm hit. An older man in a pickup who came in without a word and sat in the corner like he had weathered worse. And the semi-driver, a woman named Cora, who walked through the door like she owned whatever room she entered and immediately sized up Diane with the kind of eyes that miss very little. Diane did not make speeches, did not apologize for the dust or the cold or the flickering flashlight propped against the wall. She simply looked at what each person needed and started moving. Blankets for the couple. Water boiling within minutes. A toolkit pulled from under the counter. She walked back out into the rain without announcing it, knelt beside the hatchback's rear left tire that had been dangerously low since before anyone pulled off the road, and changed it herself. In the dark, in the rain, at 65 years old. With the kind of quiet efficiency that does not ask for applause. When she came back inside, wringing water from her sleeve, the room had gone completely still. Not the uncomfortable kind of still, the kind that happens when people witness something they were not expecting and do not yet have words for it. Cora watched her dry her hands on an old shop rag, said quietly that she had not seen someone move like that in a very long time. Diane said nothing back, but something in her chest responded to those words in a way she had not felt in years. Not pride exactly. Something older than pride. Something that felt like recognition. Like a part of herself she had packed away so long ago she had stopped remembering it existed, just raised its hand. What Diane did not know was that Cora had been filming on her phone since the moment Diane walked out into that rain with the toolkit. Did not know the video was already uploaded before the storm even eased. Did not know that by morning it would find the kind of audience that does not forget what it sees. She was already asleep on a folded blanket behind the counter, completely unaware that somewhere out there on the internet, people were watching a 65-year-old woman change a tire in a rainstorm and asking each other the same question: who is she? By the time Diane woke up that morning, 47,000 people already knew her name. She just did not know it yet. Cora was still parked in the lot when Diane stepped outside with what was left of the coffee. She handed her a cup. Cora handed her a phone without a word. Diane watched herself on that small screen, walking out into the rain with the toolkit, kneeling beside that tire in the dark, working with the kind of steadiness that does not announce itself. She watched for a long moment, then handed the phone back, went inside, put the water on to boil, She did not say anything about the video, but something behind her eyes had shifted. The woman on that screen, she recognized her. Faintly. The way you recognize a place you have not been since childhood. They started arriving before noon. Not storm refugees. People who came on purpose. Word had moved fast the way it only does when something feels real. A retired couple who drove 40 minutes from Coshocton just to see the station in person. A woman traveling alone who asked quietly for coffee and stayed at the counter for 2 hours like she had needed somewhere to exhale for a very long time. Diane served everyone who came through that door, quietly, without ceremony, the same way her father always had. And by mid-afternoon, the comments on Cora's video had stopped being comments. They had become something closer to testimonies. Truckers who had stopped at Walker's service station decades ago were writing about Franklin Walker, the way people write about someone who caught them at the exact moment they were about to fall. A man who drove Route 16 in the 80s wrote that Franklin had refused full payment after fixing his rig in the rain. A woman wrote that she had been 19 and driving alone, and that station was the first place on the whole journey where she felt safe enough to stop. Another wrote simply, "The only honest stop between Columbus and the Pennsylvania line." Diane read every word and understood for the first time that what her father had built out here was not a gas station that happened to be kind. It was a place people had been quietly missing for 2 years and did not know how to say so until now. She was still sitting with that thought when headlights turned slowly into the gravel lot. A car that had no business being on Route 16. Clean, dark, Columbus plates. The man who stepped out wore a suit that cost more than most people spent on a month of living. He stood at the edge of the lot, did not walk toward her immediately, just looked at the station the way someone looks at something they have already decided belongs to them. He introduced himself as Grant Mercer. Said he represented a development group out of Columbus. Said he had been aware of the property for some time. Then he paused just long enough to make the next words feel intentional. He said she should consider his offer before things got complicated. He smiled when he said it, but the smile and the words were not connected to each other, not even slightly. Diane took his card, said she would think about it. Mercer nodded once, got back in his car, and pulled out of the lot without looking back, like a man who was not accustomed to being told to wait. She turned the card over. The number written on the back was serious money, the kind of number designed to end conversations before they start. But it was not the number that stayed with her. It was the way Grant Mercer had looked at this station. Not like a building he wanted to buy, like a problem he needed to make disappear, and Diane Walker had spent enough of her life being someone else's problem to know exactly what that look meant. Grant Mercer's card stayed on the counter all morning, propped against her father's coffee mug, in plain sight, not because she was considering the offer, but because a man in a suit does not drive 2 hours from Columbus to a gravel lot on Route 16 without a reason that has nothing to do with kindness. He had said he was aware of the property for some time. That phrase had not left her alone since he drove away. She needed to understand what he knew, and she was starting to think her father's ledgers were the place to look. She started at the beginning, 1965. 36 years of careful documentation filling ledger after ledger on the backroom shelf. Every vehicle, every repair, every name and date and part replaced. Her father had recorded everything the way a man records things when he believes they matter, even if no one else has decided so yet. She worked through them slowly. An hour in, something changed. The entries shifted. Still her father's handwriting. Still the same deliberate pace. But the subject was no longer vehicles. It was the road, Route 16 itself. Seasonal changes. Bridge inspection dates 2 miles east. Infrastructure observations going back decades. Traffic patterns noted with the quiet consistency of someone keeping a record they expected someone to need someday. She pulled ledger after ledger off the shelf. The further back she went, the more detailed the road observations became. Like her father had been watching this stretch of highway, the way a person watches something the rest of the world has not yet realized it is about to lose. And then, tucked between 2 ledgers from 1984, so deliberately placed it could not have been accidental, a folded document. She almost missed it. Almost. Official letterhead. Ohio Department of Transportation. Dated 1981. She unfolded it at the counter under the flashlight. Read it once, then set it down flat with both hands, like it might mean something different if she looked at it from a distance. It did not. A state transportation archivist had formally recommended a 12-mile stretch of Route 16 through Muskingum County for historical designation. Original roadbed construction dating to 1922, one of the last intact examples of pre-interstate highway commercial development in eastern Ohio. And at the center of the proposed corridor, Walker's service station, listed by name. Her father had known about this. He had to have known. This document had not slipped between those ledgers by accident. It had been placed there, kept there, protected there. She turned it over. One line on the back in her father's handwriting. Steady, certain. Written like a warning meant to survive him. They will try again, keep this safe. They will try again, not they made an offer once. Not someone came by years ago. They will try again. Present tense from a man who had been gone 2 years. Like he had spent the last years of his life making sure that when someone finally showed up at this station with a number designed to make it disappear, his daughter would already know why to say no. She pressed her hand flat against that document, thought about Mercer's smile, his carefully chosen word, complicated. Whatever historical protection this station carried, he already knew about it. That was why the offer was so large, and why his timeline felt so urgent. She was still standing there when headlights swept slow across the window. A vehicle pulling into the lot. Not Mercer's dark Columbus car. Something older. A truck with real miles on it. The man who stepped out moved carefully, the way people move when the years have settled deep into their bones, but the purpose behind every step remains completely clear. He had a face that had spent decades looking into weather and never once flinched from it. He stopped at the door, looked up at the station sign for a long moment, like he was making sure he had the right place, then looked directly at Diane and said he had been trying to find Franklin Walker's daughter for 2 years. His name was Elias Boone. Elias Boone did not come inside right away. He stood at the threshold, taking in the counter, the stacked manuals, the dim light, the particular stillness of a place that had been waiting. Then his eyes found the reading glasses folded beside the register, and he went quiet in a way that needed no explanation. After a moment he said, Franklin kept those glasses in that exact spot for 30 years, said he only claimed to need them for paperwork, said everything else in his life he could already see clearly enough. Diane said nothing, but she filed that detail away somewhere important, because that was exactly the kind of thing her father would say, and she was only now beginning to understand how many people he had said things like that to. She put water on. Elias settled onto the stool. He did not ease into what he had come to say. He started with the alternator. 23 years ago, 6 miles west of the station. His rig dead on the shoulder before he had even finished pulling over. He had not called anyone yet, had barely had time to step out of the cab. When Franklin Walker's truck came up the road from the direction of the station, he had seen the rig from a distance, and simply come. Elias said he asked Franklin why he bothered driving out before anyone called. Franklin told him, a man sitting alone on the side of a road always needs someone to come, whether he says so or not. Elias picked up his coffee cup, turned it slowly in his hands, said he had been driving Route 16 for 2 decades after that, and never once passed this station without stopping. Not once. Then he set the cup down, and the tone of the room shifted the way it shifts when someone moves from memory into something they have been carrying with purpose. He told her Franklin had received serious offers on this property over the years, more than one, from people with real money and real intentions behind it. Franklin had turned every single one down. Elias had asked him why once. Franklin had not answered immediately. He had looked out at Route 16 for a long moment, then said the land this station sat on was not ready to be sold yet, that it was still waiting to become what it was supposed to be. Elias had not fully understood that at the time. He understood it now. He leaned forward, told Diane there had been a regional infrastructure proposal moving quietly through state channels for years. The kind of proposal that does not make headlines until the day it becomes official, and by then, it is already decided. A development corridor running directly through this stretch of Route 16, which meant the land beneath Walker's service station was sitting on a value that Grant Mercer's card had not come close to, not even close. Diane set her cup down on the counter, slowly. The specific coldness of understanding settling through her. Mercer had known. He had driven out here knowing exactly what this land was worth, and handed her a number designed to make her feel grateful. Elias was still talking when her phone buzzed against the counter. Unknown number. She held up a hand in quiet apology and answered. The woman on the other end spoke carefully, like someone who had made this kind of call before and understood the weight of it. She identified herself as an associate of the Muskingum County Historical Preservation Office, said their office had been tracking the recent attention around the station, said they had documentation on file going back to 1981. Then she paused, just briefly, the kind of pause that precedes something that changes the shape of a conversation. She said the original preservation filing on Walker's service station had never been closed, which meant legally it was still active. Diane looked at Elias across the counter. He looked back at her, and in the silence between them, something shifted permanently, because an active preservation filing did not just complicate Grant Mercer's offer, it potentially made it void entirely. After the call ended, Elias sat quietly for a moment. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and set something on the counter between them, a cassette tape, different from the one Diane had found at the bottom of the box, older. The label on this one was not masking tape in handwriting. It was typed, professionally labeled the way things were labeled in the early 80s when people still believed that careful presentation meant something. Elias said Franklin had given it to him years ago, said he had asked Elias to hold on to it, said he would know when to deliver it. Diane looked at the tape, then at Elias. He said he believed this was when she found the old cassette player in the back room 20 minutes later, behind a box of repair manuals on the lowest shelf, a portable unit with a cracked battery cover held shut with electrical tape. She had restored power to part of the station 2 days earlier, a single working outlet behind the counter that she had discovered by accident. She plugged the player in, sat on the stool, placed both tapes on the counter in front of her. The one she had found in the box, the one Elias had carried for years. He had told her before he left to play his first. She pressed play, static. Then a sound that hit her somewhere beneath thought, her father's voice. Not the voice of the last years she had known him. Not the voice that had gone careful and slow the way voices do when the body begins to tire. This was an earlier version, steadier, warmer in the way of a man who still believed he had time. He did not begin with hello. He began the way he always began everything, in the middle of a thought he had clearly been having for a while. He said, if Elias was playing this for you, then something brought you back to Route 16, and whatever it was not an accident. He paused. The tape caught the sound of the station in the background, a truck passing on the road outside, coffee percolating somewhere close, the ordinary sounds of a place that was alive. He said he wanted her to understand something about this station, that he had never found the right moment to say in person. Said the right moment kept not arriving the way. Right moments sometimes don't, when the people involved are both too careful with each other to push through the silence. Diane pressed her hand flat on the counter, listening. He talked about the road first, about what Route 16 had meant to the people who traveled it, before the interstates pulled everything away from the old highways like a tide going out. He said this station had not survived because of gasoline or repairs, or even the coffee. It had survived because people need places that hold still. In a world that keeps insisting on movement, a place that holds still becomes something close to sacred. He said he had watched Diane hold still for her entire family for decades, quietly, without complaint, without recognition. He said he had watched her make herself smaller and smaller to fit inside a life that was not built around her, and he had not said anything, because he did not know how, because she seemed so certain that the life she was living was the one she had chosen, and a father does not easily tell his daughter that he is not sure she chose it at all. His voice caught slightly on that last sentence, just slightly, the way a steady man's voice catches when he finally says the thing he has been holding back the longest. Diane was not aware she was crying until she felt it. He said the station was not a consolation prize. He said it clearly, directly, the way he said things when he needed to make sure they landed. He said he had kept it, maintained it, protected it from every offer and every developer and every person who looked at a piece of Route 16 and saw only what it could be demolished into, because he believed a day would come when Diane would need a place that already knew her name, a place that had been waiting for her specifically, not for whoever she had become for other people, for her, the version of her that existed before she learned to disappear. He said, there is a second tape. Play it only after you have read everything in the back room, everything. Not most of it, everything, because what you find in there will change what the second tape means. and what the second tape means, is the one thing I could not figure out how to leave you in a letter. The tape ended, static, then silence. Diane sat in that silence for a long time. The second tape still on the counter in front of her, untouched. She was not ready, not yet, because something her father said was pulling at her with a specific and urgent insistence. Read everything in the back room, everything. She had been through most of the boxes, but not all of them. There was one shelf she had not touched, bottom left, 4 boxes pushed to the very back like they had been placed there deliberately out of casual reach. She got up slowly, walked to the back room, knelt in front of that shelf, and pulled the first box forward. The label on the front stopped her cold. 3 words in her father's handwriting, "For the lawyers." She pulled the first box forward, set it on the floor, opened it, and understood immediately that what her father had built in this room was not storage. It was a case, organized, dated, indexed with the patience of someone who had spent years making sure that when the right person finally opened these boxes, every piece of evidence would speak for itself. The first folder held the original property deed, 1958, her grandfather's name, transferred cleanly to Franklin Walker in 1971. She set it aside and went deeper. The second folder was thicker, much thicker. Letters, exchanged between her father and the Ohio Department of Transportation across nearly 2 decades, 1981 through 1999. Franklin had not simply received that preservation proposal and filed it away. He had answered it, 6 times over 18 years, each letter more detailed than the last. Historical photographs, repair records going back to the 1960s, traveler accounts collected by hand, documentation of Route 16's original roadbed construction that predated anything currently in the state archive. He had been building something. Not loudly, not with lawyers or press releases or public meetings, just quietly, methodically, letter by letter across 2 decades. The archivist Gerald Purcell had written back every time, and his responses changed across those 18 years in a way that told its own story. Early letters were careful and measured. Middle letters were engaged and detailed. The final letter from Purcell, dated October 1999, was unambiguous. He wrote that the historical designation case for Walker's service station was among the strongest his office had ever reviewed, that the filing had been formally submitted to the State Preservation Board, and that approval was a matter of when, not if. Diane sat back on her heels. 18 years. Her father had spent 18 years building this case while running a station, raising a family, and watching the highway outside slowly go quiet around him. 18 years of believing this place deserved to survive, and never saying a word about it to anyone. The third folder was thinner. 1 document inside. A legal brief prepared by an attorney in Zanesville, dated 2003. She did not read every line. She did not need to. What she needed was already clear by the second paragraph. Any sale of a property under active historical preservation consideration in Ohio, conducted without Preservation Board notification, was subject to legal challenge and potential nullification. She stayed very still on that word, nullification. She thought about Grant Mercer standing at the edge of her gravel lot, his suit, his number, his careful unhurried smile, his word, complicated. He had not driven 2 hours from Columbus because he wanted a gas station. He had driven 2 hours because he needed her signature before she found this room, before these folders, before 18 years of her father's quiet preparation made his offer not just insufficient, but potentially worthless. She put the documents back, stood up slowly, walked to the counter, and stood there for a moment with her hand on the second tape, not picking it up yet, just standing, because some part of her understood that once she pressed play, she would hear her father's voice for the last time, and she wanted one more breath before that became true. She pressed play. His voice came through differently this time, not the warmer earlier recording. This was the version she recognized from his final years. Careful with words the way people become careful when they understand that the ones they choose now are the ones that will have to last. He said, "If you are hearing this, you found the folders, which means you understand now what this station actually is, not what it looks like from the road, not what someone like Mercer sees when he looks at the land beneath it, what it actually is." He paused, a long pause, the kind that carries the specific weight of a man choosing between saying something and protecting someone, and finally deciding she is strong enough for both. He said, "There is one more thing I could not put in any folder, could not write in any letter. Look beneath the front counter. Not in the drawers. Beneath it. There is a panel that does not match the rest of the wood. Press the left corner. Diane was already moving before he finished the sentence. The panel was exactly where her father said it would be. Left corner. Slightly different grain from the rest of the wood. Something you would never notice unless you were looking for it. Unless someone who loved you told you exactly where to press. She knelt down, pressed the corner. The panel released with a soft, clean click, like a breath being let out after a very long hold. Inside, a small fireproof metal box, sealed with a combination lock, and taped to the top a folded piece of paper with 4 numbers, her birthday, month, day, year. She turned the dial. The lock opened. Inside the box were 3 things. The first was a document she recognized immediately. The Preservation Board's formal response to Gerald Purcell's 1999 submission. Stamped, signed, official, approved. Dated 2001, her father had known for over 20 years and had never said a word to anyone. The second item was a letter from the Zanesville attorney confirming the approved designation had been formally recorded with the county, making the station legally protected under Ohio Historical Preservation Statute. Permanently. The third item was a single index card, her father's handwriting. 1 sentence. Now it belongs to someone who will know what to do with it. Diane stayed on that floor, both hands flat on the cold concrete. Her father had not left her a broken-down gas station on a forgotten road. He had left her something nobody could touch. Not Mercer. Not a development group out of Columbus. Not a lawyer or a settlement or a husband who packed her life into a single box and called it done. Something completely and permanently hers. And he had spent 20 years making sure of it, without ever once asking her to thank him for it. That was 4 months ago. Walker's service station is open now, coffee on by 6 every morning. The old pumps restored by a mechanic from Coshocton who drove out after seeing Cora's video, took one look at the station and told Diane he would not accept full payment. Said his father had stopped here once in 1978 when his truck broke down on Route 16. Said Franklin Walker had driven out to meet him on the road, had not waited to be called. Elias Boone passes through more often than his route requires. Nobody mentions it. Nobody needs to. The Historical Preservation Office has connected with 2 universities about Route 16's cultural documentation project. Franklin Walker's repair logs and traveler letters are being formally archived. His name attached to this stretch of highway in a way that does not wash off. Grant Mercer's development proposal for this corridor was quietly withdrawn. No announcement, no explanation. Just gone. The way things go when the ground shifts and there is nothing left to stand on. Diane fixed the neon sign last month. All the letters working now for the first time in years. Walker's service station glowing steady against the Ohio dark, visible from a long way down Route 16, the way her father always believed it should be. She is 65 years old. She lost everything that was never really hers, and found the one thing that had been waiting with her name on it the entire time. Now before you go, we need to ask you something. Because right now there is someone watching this who is sitting in their own version of that empty driveway, handed a box, told their time is up, made to feel like 65 or 55, or whatever age life decided to pull the floor out, means the story is over. It is not over. Diane's father knew that. He spent 20 years proving it quietly on a forgotten Ohio road. And if you have ever had someone in your life, a parent, a grandparent, a person who left you something that only made sense later, tell us about them in the comments right now. What did they leave you that nobody else could see the value in? Because this community needs to hear it. And so do we. Subscribe and stay close. Not because we are asking. Because the next story we are bringing you involves a woman who discovers something hidden inside her late mother's house that her siblings had been desperately trying to keep her from finding for years. And unlike Diane, she almost walked away before she found it.